From great to unforgettable, the IBM TechXchange Speaker Advantage. And we've got Gary with us. We've just done our sound check and our video check, and we're as ready as we can be for today's, what we're calling part one of the Speaker Effectiveness webcast series. And part two is a week from today, exactly the same time, with our special guest speaker, Melinda Buckley, unleashing the power of story. And I encourage you to enjoy this one and to join us again next week. The two parts go together. There are two dimensions, two different ways of looking at what we do and how to be an effective, impactful speaker. That's what we're trying to do here, is help you raise your game. I always learn something. I've been doing this for a long, long time, and it's just a wonderful process. What we've done at TechXchange this year is we've engaged with 4 speaker coaches. Melinda and Gary are doing our pre-conference webcasts. I've just told you about those. We also have Paul Cortellesi, who was for several years has been helping us. Glenn Anderson, who used to work for IBM in the Z area, is now a professional speaker coach. And a lot of the Z people love working with Gary. They have some sessions on site. Gary's got 2, in fact, and you can see the numbers there. Sign up for those. They will sell out, I'm pretty sure. Melinda's got one. Paul Paul's got one on the growth mindset, which sort of impacts communications as well. The other thing is that all 4 of these folks are available to do what we're calling a fine-tune session, a 15-minute session in the speaker ready room. Come down, bring your laptop, and show Gary you're open, or show him your clothes. And he'll just say, look, let's just tweak it. He's not going to tell you to redo anything. He's just going to give you that extra pointers. Melinda will do the same, Paul and Glenn. So we're pretty excited about that. Let's get me off the stage and get our special guest on stage. We're excited to welcome back Gary, who's made himself invaluable at previous tech exchanges as a speaker coach. He was an important part of our program last year, and he's joining us again. He's been helping salespeople and corporate leaders and technologists for a long, long time become more impactful, hone their presentations, and be more effective speakers. So we are delighted to have him here today to help you and your Tech Exchange session go from great to unbelievable.
Good morning. Thank you very much, David. Thank you, Susan, and welcome everybody. I can't wait to get started to share the information I'm about to give you over the course of the next, 60 minutes or so. So before we get started, I just want to make sure that we're all ready. You can actually see my screen, and I've got my little chat right here. So can you please say, type a 1 in the box so I know that the chat is working. If you can all just get your finger and hit the number 1 in the box for me so I know the chat is working. 111, fantastic. Yeah, great to meet you. So good morning, everybody. It is a bright, sunny day here in Breckenridge, Colorado, and good morning and good afternoon to wherever you are in the world. The first thing I really, really want to do is congratulate you. Congratulate you for being chosen to be one of the speakers at this year's Tech Exchange. But more importantly, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for caring enough about your presentation, your reputation, and your audience to make your presentation truly memorable. See, the thing is this, you are experts in your field. You're already great at what you do. And this is why you have been chosen to share your message on the stage. But the challenge we have, the reality we have, is that we have a very noisy world. Especially at the event when we get there into Orlando, there's going to be well over 1,000 presenters, over 1,500 presentations over the course of the next few days. You've built a really great reputation. You're the people that people go to when there's problems. They need something solved. You're the expert in that field. You're great at what you do. But at events like this and other events, when you have so many presentations and so many presenters, it's going to be really, really hard to stand out. And this is the key thing, because once you're in that environment, you're going to see 5,000 people roaming around, all rushing to get to it. If you've been to one of the events, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're all trying to get from room to room, from presentation to presentation. And then there's you who's going to put so much effort into this. I'm thinking, well, hold on, I hope I can make some kind of impression. I hope I can be memorable with a presentation I give. But the reality is this: expertise does not equate to memorability. Your expertise, your years of industry knowledge does not equate to being memorable when it comes to presentations. And I suppose the easiest way to look at that is think about how many actors there are and how many actors actually become memorable. Speaking is no different, it's exactly the same. You see, most tech presentations don't fail because the content isn't great. The content is usually really, really good. The message is really good. It fails because the delivery of that presentation was just vanilla. It was just, forgettable. So I want to ask you a question, and I want you to think of a speaker that stands out to you. Now, this speaker could be an actor, it could be a mentor, it could be a politician, but I want you to think of a speaker that you truly, truly look up to and think, he or she is a great orator. He or she, whenever they speak, their message lands and it moves me, and it's something that I remember. If you can think of at least one of those speakers, please put a 1 in the box for me. Please put a 1 in the box. If you can think of a really great speaker that's memorable to you, you think, yes, I love that speaker. You know, say one, yeah, because we all know one, right? We know a handful. Well, now what I want you to do is to think of somebody within your field, within your niche, in your level of expertise. If you can think of a speaker or somebody within your field who you would like to aspire to, please put a 2 in the box. If you can't, put a 0 in the box. If you can think of a speaker within your field that you want to aspire to, put 2. If you can think of someone that you really, it just doesn't do it, put a 0 in the box. 2, 2, 0, 0, 2, 2, 0, 0. Yeah, so there's not that many, right? And here's the thing. The challenge when it comes to being a great presenter really boils down to the way your audience remembers what you said. They don't have to remember everything. They just have to remember what these takeaways are. So what I am aiming to do with you today is to share with you over the course of the next 45 minutes, 50 minutes, or something along those lines, takeaways that you can use immediately to elevate your presentation from just a presentation in the audience perception by 10x, 20x, 30x. But what it's going to have to do is it's going to have to take some work, just like a sprinter. Now, you might be thinking, well, Gary, what's sprinters got to do with speakers? Well, they have one thing in common for a start, and that is they have an end goal. The sprinters know when they're on the blocks, whether it's 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters, these sprinters, they've got to get to their end goal. And they want to get there in such a memorable way that we only remember the winner. We don't remember who came second. We don't remember who came third. And we certainly don't remember who did not come anywhere near third, even though they were all introduced at the beginning of the race. But when we actually understand that a sprinter, although their focus and their outcome is the end result, they also appreciate that it's not just going through the tape, going through that end. It's a whole process in order to get to that end result. It takes some form of talent. It takes far more effort, much more practice. And the more you do, the muscle memory kicks in and you're doing things automatically. The challenge with most speakers is that most speakers in most industries, and I've been at the forefront of speaking now for over 2 decades. I've been speaking on stage across the world. I have coached and mentored some of the best speakers around the globe. And the difference between those speakers who are memorable and those speakers who are just vanilla isn't in the content. It is in the delivery of that content, in the way that they have practiced and learned and then mastered each and every time to make sure they get better. Just like a sprinter does. When a sprinter doesn't just practice once, they practice and practice and practice. And after every single race, they reassess, and with them and their coach, and they reassess and they go, okay, what could be done better? What can be improved? How can my arms swing higher? How can I force with far more effort to get there? How can I start quicker? How can I be lighter on my feet? Speaking is exactly the same. It's just a skill. We're not born to be great speakers, but we can become great speakers and more memorable speakers if we put the effort and practice in. So my question to you is this. Do you want to be memorable in a sea of almost 1,500 presentations when we're in Orlando? If you want to be memorable and you want your presentation and you to stand out, please type me in the chat box for me so I can see. We have got almost 100 people here today. So please type me if you want to stand out and be memorable and say, yes, that was a great presentation. Fantastic. So we're definitely in the right room. And this is the key thing. But you've got to want it. So here's the thing. I'm going to share with you some really, really great stuff that can really elevate presentations. But I want to make this one caveat. You don't have to change everything. Some of you are absolute rule followers. So what you've probably already done is you've finished your presentation. You've probably even submitted it, because if memory serves me correct, I'm pretty sure the presentations and decks have to be in by Fridays. I'm pretty sure the majority of you have written and designed your presentation. And what I want to assure you is you don't need to change everything, but just by taking some of the things I'm about to share with you today, tweaking it a little bit, you will find that wherever the bar is, you will raise above it. With a little bit of practice between now and the beginning of October, you will raise the bar of your industry. And I know that's a bold claim, but I know I've been doing this long enough, and I know through my clients that I've coached and mentors how they can raise their bar as well, not by being overwhelmed, but just taking a few things and making sure that your presentation stands out. So here's my question to you. And you don't have to put it in the box. If you're a very quick typer, you can if you like. But my question to you is this. It's a two-step question. What do you want out of your presentation or presentations at TechXchange? Do you know? Is it a massive round of applause? Is it a standing ovation? Is it to share your message? Is it to get more clients? Is it to build your reputation? What is it that you actually want to achieve as an outcome for your presentation? If you got it to educate and illuminate, there were questions, great. To help others learn, fantastic. I love that. Connecting with peers, fantastic. So when you have this outcome, you know exactly where that finish line is, where that tape is, and you'll be able to judge, did it work or not? But here's the thing. Now you know what the outcome is. What have you done to ensure that you get what you want? How do you ensure that you get the outcome you desire? Or are you just hope and praying that it will work? And as we've been saying in the business industry for many, many years, hope and prayers is not a strategy. You need to have a strategy in order to make sure you have the very best chance of hitting that ribbon at the end of this race, at the end of your presentation. So that's question one. Thank you very much for putting that in. I absolutely love the interaction you're putting in here. Number two, what do you want your audience to have as an outcome? Have you even thought of that? I know we've got the big event coming up and we've got to present and we've got to do our slides and we've got to do our presentations, but have you actually thought what you actually want the audience to feel, what you actually want the audience to do? Have you thought about How are they going to be sitting there, and how are you going to engage them to make sure that they do help you achieve everything that you want to achieve from there? Then so what have we got? To enjoy themselves while learning something new? Yes, I said that you want them to have a great experience. Absolutely. There's no point being a bored crowd member. We want to be up there cheering for you. And here's the thing. They already want you to succeed. This is the key thing when it comes to presenting. They already want you to succeed. You've earned the accolade of being the expert. We're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But they already know you're the expert because you've been chosen to speak. You have that stage. They're coming to already learn from you. But what have you done to make sure that they have the great experience? Because when they have a great experience, they are going to help you achieve what you want to do. So I want you to bear that in mind. 2 outcomes. What is it that you want? Be very, very clear on that. Don't be wishy-washy about it. Be very clear. Every speaker that speaks on every stage across the globe, live or online, knows before they even speak what is the outcome that they want personally from that presentation. But they also know what they want their audience to feel, what their audience to learn, and what they want their audience to do. Because once you know those 2 things, we can reverse engineer and then put all our pieces together for our presentations, with or without slides, depending on what you're doing. So whether you are doing one presentation, whether you're doing a demo, or whether you're doing several presentations, this allows you to not have writer's block or stare at a screen. In fact, put a 5 in the box if you've ever had writer's block or looking at a blank PowerPoint screen thinking, what am I going to write down here? And it's got to be the really heaviest thing. Put a 5 in the box if that's ever happened to you. And thinking, what am I going to say from doing so? 5, 5, 5. We've all had that, right? We've all had it. But it helps so much once you know what your outcome is. And then you can start building those little Lego blocks. You can start building those jigsaw pieces so that instead of starting at the beginning and then thinking, how do I get to the end? You start at the end and go, okay, what has to be in place in order to do that? And that is one of the key elements and key secrets to making sure that your delivery of the content and your content lands properly with your audience. And that is how you begin to stand out. So how do we create a memorable presentation? Well, I think the key thing here is to really start thinking and defining what is a memorable presentation. Remember we talked about earlier that most presentations are very vanilla. They just sound like every other presentation that's out there. The topic might be slightly different, your energy might be slightly different, but majority of the time it's it is about this, it is about that, And one of the things that my clients come to me all the time is saying, well, how do I stand out in the sea of sameness? How do I build trust with my prospects and my audience when everybody else is saying the same thing? See, being an expert in your field, that you don't sound the same. But unfortunately, the perception of the audience, the perception of your prospects, the perception of those you are trying to have your message land is, nah, kind of heard that one before. So what is a memorable presentation? Well, a memorable presentation, this is my definition of it, a memorable presentation happens when the presenter's mindset, the content of the message, and the delivery of that message all overlap together. It's not just about what is said and who is saying the message, but it's how the audience feels from that. And that is how you get your audience to have a memorable experience and get them to where you want to get to. You see, the thing is this when it comes to speaking, from the beginning of your presentation to the end of your presentation, is what I call the opportunity gap. Whether you're speaking to colleagues, to peers, to bosses, to prospects, to clients, there is the opportunity gap between where you are right now and where they are, and where you would like them to be and where you would like to be. And it's just this gap. And that's what I call the opportunity gap. And see, the thing is this. If you have great content, but deliver it poorly, then it's just content. It'll just it actually will then extend the opportunity gap further away from you and further away from them, because they're not really taking in what you're saying. Yeah, it's knowledge. Yeah, it's information. Yeah, it's just content. But the delivery of it hasn't made them go, ooh, let me take some notes. Ooh, let me sit on the edge of my seats and lean in. Conversely, if you have great content and the delivery is so good that they go, wow, and it's memorable, then the opportunity gap shortens and it's easier to get across that chasm. But when you combine all three with great presenter mindset, great simple content, and we're going to talk a little bit about content today as well, and the delivery of it, when you have those three, that's when the opportunity gaps become so small that it's very easy for you to take them across the chasm, very easy for you to get your desired result as a presenter and as a speaker, and very easy for them to see you as a memorable speaker and a memorable presenter. So remember, let's make our content easy to digest and our delivery fantastic, where they go, yes, that was a great speaker. So we have far more people on this call going, yes, I know that speaker. Yes, I know that speaker. Very memorable. And that speaker is you. You become that memorable speaker. So let's take the very first thing. Let's talk about, in fact, before I do that, does that make sense? If that makes sense, could you put a 2 in the chat for me? If what I've said so far, what I've shared is beginning to make some kind of sense to you, please put a 2 in the box for me so that I know we're on the right track, and then I can start sharing more and more stuff for you as we go along. Yeah, and I said, thank you very much for your interaction, because the more interaction we have, the more fun we have, and the more I can share with you, and the more we actually learn. Okay, so let's talk about mindset. What is the presenter mindset? How many times have you gone to a presentation and you've heard this presenter start speaking, and it's like, it's like Charlie Brown's teacher, right? Snoopy's like, and it just doesn't connect with you. What that really starts off with is not necessarily the content, because it just sounds like, the delivery is very poor, but more importantly is the mindset of that presenter. Are they really coming up and showing their best version of themselves? Are they doing it for the best version for them? Are they being the best version for their audience? Chances are no. So before we do anything, it doesn't really matter what your content is or how you deliver it until you know that you are the very, very best version of yourself. So the question I always ask myself, and I get my mentees to do this, is to, when you go to your presentation, before you start speaking, ask yourself this question: do you own that room? If the answer is no, you need to change your mindset. This is not your audience's room. It's not the conference organizer's room. It's not the hotel's room. This is your room for that 15, 20, 45, an hour, 90 minutes. This is your room. You own it. This is your space. This is where you can do what you want to do. And as you say, help people learn, get more prospects, get people to form a lineup to see you at the end. We often say about people would love standing ovations. Well, standing ovations don't pay bills. People coming up to you and says, how can I work with you? How can I implement your ideas? That's what helps pay the bills, not just for you, but for them too. So your mindset should be one of giving, one of knowing that, hey, I'm going to give my all to that room for the next 45, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or whatever the case may be. Any thoughts of, am I good enough? Are my slides good enough? Is my presentation good enough? They are out of the window. They should be well gone by now. Rather like playing golf. If you're playing, in fact, how many of you play golf? I'm going to continue speaking, but if you play golf, stick a number 1 in the box for me, because this is going to make really sense to you. And if you don't play golf, this is going to make sense to you too. Stick a 1 in the box for me if you play golf or have ever played golf. Okay, -1. Well, I don't know what that means, but yes, okay. So playing golf is that you see all these people go up to the driving range where they can practice how they swing. And the majority of them doing it before the game. Well, the challenge with that is this: that's a little bit too late to start practicing your swing just before a golf game or just before a golf match. The muscle memory must already be there. Some people say it's a warm-up, and that is fine. We're going to talk about warm-up in a minute. But if you're going to say, yeah, I'll just turn up there and I'll just wing it and I'll just get a few practices in and that'll be fine, then your mindset's in the wrong place. So all that thought, negative, is going to come out in your presentation. Now, we're not saying that you should fake it till you make it. This is about being prepared for your presentation. And one of the best ways to do that is to ensure that you are in that giving mode, like I said, and ensuring that you want your audience to get the best experience out of it, to get some great learning from it. If you are suffering from, let's say, imposter syndrome from that, which many, many people do, it's not a case of ignoring it because it's already there. But what we can do is say, well, I'm going to give the very best that I can, and I want them to make sure that their learning points land with my audience so that they remember those points. So here's a key little secret for you. If you do suffer from imposter syndrome, whether you do or you don't, but if you do specifically worry and have anxiety about speaking in public, reduce the amount of information you give. It's not about over talking. It's not about giving more information. There's a tendency within the industry to say, whoa, well, as long as I over speak and give them a load of information, they're going to think I'm really clever. That is confusing people. We see this over and over again where they're just over confusing the audience. Have 1, 2, 3 little takeaways you want them to have. And I'm going to give you 3 today. 1, 2, 3 points that you can give that they can go and go, that was memorable. So why do we want to do this? Well, we want to do this because we want to be in the right mindset. We don't want to doubt ourselves. We know that instead of trying to give them an encyclopedia, we're giving them 3 to 5 points to take away, and we want them to have a memorable experience. So how do we change this mindset? How do we make sure that we're in the right mindset? Some of you might be thinking, oh, I'm scared every time I get nerves before I get on the thing. I was speaking with David earlier, and speakers, there is this little nervousness every time we get up and speak, no matter how many times we do it, but we can turn that nervousness and appreciate that nervousness into something that will work for us and for our audience. Just like the sprinters on the blocks. We've all seen the sprinters on the blocks before the race. They crouch down, they put their feet in, they put their hands behind the white line, they stick their backside up in the air, and silence drops. The crowd goes quiet. Everybody is waiting for the starting gun to go. Do you think the sprinters there are shaking in their shoes and the nervousness and they're about to throw up? Of course not. But do they have nerves? Do they have nervous energy? Absolutely. But because they have trained themselves, because they have used science, which I'm about to share with you, on how they can do that, they can control those nerves so that they get out the blocks fantastically well in the best way they know well. So what is this science that I'm talking about? Well, it's one word at this stage: testosterone. What? Testosterone? How are we getting onto testosterone when it comes down to speaking? Well, here's the thing. Whether you're a male or female, testosterone is a hormone in us which makes us feel more powerful. It makes us feel we're far more in control. And we can actually trick our brains into producing more testosterone for us, whether I say male or female. We can get more testosterone just before we start so that our bodies are filled as much as we need in order to get out of that starting blocks so we start well. What we don't want to do to be a memorable speaker is to kind of meander along the beginning of the presentation. Well, yeah, so we're this and we're that, and they're hoping you'd warm up. We want to get out. You want to be memorable? You want to start straight away. So how do we do that? How do we build up testosterone within our body before we start presenting? Well, there's various things you can do, and I've done all of them over the years. You can start doing push-ups, just before you start presenting. You can do star jumps, you can do some squats, you can do all of that. But I can already hear some of you going, I don't want to go hot and sweaty, Gary, before I start speaking. What else can I do? Well, I want you to do this with me, all right? I can't see you, so I'm going to hope that you're doing it with me. Do this with me unless you're driving. All right, something we call isometric holds. When you put your hands together right in front of you, and if your fingers are together, I want you to separate them. All right, and this is what I actually did just before I started speaking with you today. And what I want you to do is start pressing as hard as you can, pushing your fingers together. And when you push your fingers together, think about all the 5 fingers being pushed as hard as you can, and then down to your palms, and feel the pressure that your palms are being pushed into, and then your elbows, and then your shoulders, and your back. And you should start feeling this power inside you come up. And as you release, I want you to do one more thing. And that is your move, your power move, to finish that power move all off. Now, I know some of you are thinking, this sounds so gooky, Gary. Why are you making me do this? Here's the thing. When you can, I've already got that. I love this feeling from doing this. Once you have this power, then you know that your goal is going to be so much more achievable. Your desire for your audience is going to be so much more achievable because you own this room, you own this power from doing so. So I want you to do your move right now. I can show you what my move is. My general move is a pump, pump, yeah! That's my move. It's 2 pumps to the floor, and then 1 up, and then boom, and then I'm ready to go. All right? Whatever your move is, do your move. And if you're thinking, this is a little bit just weird. It's a little bit weird from doing so. I want to ask you this question first, before you pass judgment. Anybody know who this lovely lady is? This very talented English actress. Does anyone know who she is from there? You may know her from Ted Lasso, from the thing, Hannah Waddington. What you may not know is that she built her reputation by being a stage actress, by walking the planks, as it were, on the stages before she became famous through Ted Lasso. And if you're thinking, well, I'm too good to do those silly little moves, let me show you something.
I make myself big. Before I enter the room, I come to my bed, I set up my tiptoes, my arms in the air, so as big as possible. You're my power.
And then we're ready. So whether you do it or not, what I can say to you is this: what is your move? Think about you. You're not doing it in public. You are literally doing it outside of the room. Now, if you're big stages, we normally have a green room, or we can do this in the green room, or you can go to the bathroom just before you start, or do it slightly off stage if you've got. But so if you're going to be in the rooms at TechXchange, what I suggest you do is go to the bathroom and just do that for you, just whatever that move is, and then walk in high with your shoulders up, before you actually start. But another thing you can do, which I do all the time, is that if I've got a small enough room, 20, 30, 50 people, I will make sure I position myself at the side door, or the door where they all enter. So as they enter in the room, I'm shaking their hand. The very fact that I'm shaking the hand is building up more testosterone. It makes me feel good. It makes them feel good. And if you want to start doing that and see how it is and hold me to it, make sure you come to my 2 events, and I'll make sure I shake your hand at the TechXchange from doing so. So this helps you move. How many of you are going to do a move? Go on, let me know. How many of you are actually going to do a move? Put me in the box if you're going to do a move, or create the move before you go. Me from there. No, I thought me. Here it comes. Yeah. So whatever that move is, remember, it's just for you. But if you want to be the presenter that is memorable, you can't do what everyone else does and just start vanilla. You've got to be up there. You've got to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Okay, so I've talked about some tips on mindsets and how you show up as the presenter. If you do that, just that alone, you're going to put yourself 50% above every other speaker at the event. Now, we've got almost 100 people here today. So we are going to have, of the 1,500 speakers, up to 1,500 speakers, you are going to be more memorable if you just do that little tweak alone. Not a lot, but it's going to make you a little bit more memorable. So what else can we actually do? What else can we do to help you become more memorable as a speaker? The content. Let's now talk about the content that you are going to deliver. What is it that you're going to give your audience? Because content is king, right? Apparently, not so much. The content just helps you make more memories with your audience. It helps them believe in you, that what your message says is believable and they should potentially take action from it. But it isn't just about the content. Most speakers think, well, if my content's good, everything else doesn't matter. As long as I put more information into that slide, as long as I talk over and over, what's going to happen is that they're going to see me as an expert. But we've already discussed that being an expert does not equate to memorability. It's just you being an expert, but you've already been there. You've already chosen to be the expert. So why are you trying to reprove that you are the expert? So I see this time and time and time again. You see brilliant people who are such great experts in their field overcrowd their slides. They drown their audiences in so much information that the audience can't keep up. And they use slides like they're overcomplicated user manuals. Like they're saying, well, look how much information there is. You learn this, and then you'll be just as good as me. Well, the challenge with that, guys, is this. If it doesn't land, it's not memorable. If it's too much information, it's not memorable. And this is, let me give you a couple of examples of memory. You've probably seen some of these before. You may even be guilty of doing some of them yourselves. What do we think is wrong with this particular slide? For me, too many colors, too many lines. As an audience member, I don't know where to look. Do I look at the red? Do I look at the year? What's the thing at the bottom say? It's just all over the place. It's too complicated for me, for my little brain to try and understand it. Overwording it. People don't need, if they can read something, they don't need you. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. If you've got too many words on it, what are they going to do? They're going to read it, because that's what they think you want them to do, is to read it. Then you've got, let's say, flow charts that too complicated flow, or text on backgrounds which people at the back of the room can barely read, and maybe some at the front of the room. So perhaps you're guilty of this too. But here's the thing. I want you to put a 5 in a box as if it's happened to you. How many times have you given a presentation and the people have said, can you send me the slides? If someone has ever asked you to send them the slides, or is there slides available, put a 5 in the box for me. All right. If someone's ever asked you, can you send me the slides, or, can I have a copy of the slides, put a 5. Okay, good. It's happened to us all. Here's the thing. If they're asking for the slides, it means they have tuned out. They're going to look for it later on. They're going to study it later on. They're not paying attention because you've already lost them in your presentation. If you can get them to read slides, they don't need you as a presenter. What they're doing effectively is saying, yeah, I'm going to tune out now. Send me the slides. I'll look over it in my own time without you. And you become instantly forgettable. So the key is this. When it comes to slides, making sure that the slides are easy for them to digest. Don't get them to read it, because what the worst offender, we've all seen this, right? The worst offender is the slide reader. All right, the ones who turn around and then start reading the slides that's behind them. They're already reading it. They don't need you to read it with them. They're already reading it. But the biggest problem is when they start reading it, they're not reading at the same speed you are. They're either faster than you, in which case they can't hear you because they're reading, or they're slower than you and they're trying to catch up. So if you've ever found yourself guilty of reading a slide, stop doing it. Your slide should be a prompt as opposed to the presentation. You are the presenter. You want to be memorable. You deliver the information. Your slides are just the prompt to do so. So many people keep asking me, so well, how do you do content then? The content is the slides. No, that is not the content. The slide is there to prompt either you and or your audience. Like the images, for example, great images. If you've got some great images, speak 1,000 words. You don't need the words there. But more importantly, and I can't do this particular presentation without touching on this, is this particular fact that stories are remembered 20 times more than facts. So I'm not going to go into how stories, because Melinda's going to do a great session on that next week. If you haven't booked Melinda's session, make sure you book it in. after this session, all right? Don't go off and book it now. I want you to pay attention to this. I want you to understand that if you're not using stories in your presentations, you are wasting some fantastic energy and some fantastic science that allows your audience to remember you. So without going too much into it, I'll let Melinda do that. I'm going to share some scientific studies with you, or one particular scientific study with you, to prove how important storytelling is. Way back in 2009, there was this chap called Rob Walker, and he was watching this, and some news, and he found that Michael Jackson's jacket, the red leather one, you know, the one that he was in Thriller with, you know, with the red and the black stripes and that recently sold in an auction for just over $1.5 million. $1.5 million for a leather jacket. And Rob was thinking, well, but it's a leather jacket. Yeah, I know it's worn by somebody famous. Why is it worth $1.5 million for a leather jacket? Well, because of the fact that it was in the Thriller video, you know, one of the best-selling albums of all times at the time, and this jacket had a story to it which elevated its perceived value. So he decided to do something called the significant object study. And in that significant object study, he went to eBay and thrift stores and started buying these little cheap trinkets. He bought 100 trinkets, you know, with 99 cents and $1 and some change or whatever. And he bought all these 100 trinkets, and for a total spend of $128. Then he went and hired 100 creative writers to write a story about each one of those trinkets. In other words, give it a story, give it some kind of prevalence to what it was, and then he relisted it. He relisted every single one of those 100 trinkets for his $128 outlay. He relisted it on eBay, same photo, same thing. The only difference is now it had a story inside the description. Well, the result, from his $128 spend, they produced $3,612 just by having a story attached to it. Now, before we go too far on it, let me just tell you, he had to give all that money back, and he did, because it was an experiment. You know, these stories were made up, and he had to give that $3,000 back. But the power of the stories and the science behind it is that just by having the same trinket and having a story attached to each one of those trinkets, there was an increased value of 2,710% in that same little trinket from made up stories. Think of the power of your stories, of why you created something, of why you do what you do, of who you actually are. That is where the power is when it comes to stories. And as I said, Melinda's going to do a fantastic show you how to do those. But I want to talk about why they actually do it. You see, one of the key reasons why it works is because of dopamine. Dopamine, again, is one of those things that we produce inside ourselves that is like the anticipation of reward. When you can create dopamine within your audience and they have this perception of reward, that it's going to get better, they are going to get better, the desire for growth somewhere along the line, you know, the desire for a win, that's how your stories, that's how your presentation becomes even more memorable. By putting stories in that generate dopamine, and when you can get your audience all fired up on this dopamine, that's when they pay attention more. That's when they put the focus in. So how do we actually do that? Well, one of the simplest ways, there's many ways of doing it, but for the purpose of today, one of the ways to do that, which I really want to do, is to put the power of whys. If you've ever read Simon Sinek's book or his videos or his YouTube, or his TED Talk, go and watch it, go and read that book. The power of why. Why you? Why them? Why now? Why this topic? Why this app? Why this solution? Why this challenge? Why this solution? The more you can give them a story as to reasons why this happens, the more dopamine it's going to produce within your audience. And the more dopamine, the more anticipation for reward, the more desire to win and be better, the more they're going to lean in. So if your product, your presentation is about a SaaS program or a service or a product or a reason, make sure you have more whys in there so that it can come along in the journey for you. Is that useful, guys? If that's useful, can you put a 1 in the box for me? If you can actually see that when it comes down to content, it isn't just about delivering the facts. It's really about creating dopamine and stories with that. Put a 1, 1, 1, 1. Fantastic. I'm glad you're finding this useful from there. Okay, so that's the content side. So we've talked a bit now about the presenter side. We've talked about some of the content, what you need to do. Let's talk about the delivery now. What is it about the delivery we do? Because remember, we want to shorten that opportunity gap between where you are and the desired result that you want for your presentation and where you want your audience to be. So the third element of this coming all together now is actually in the delivery. How do we deliver presentations that doesn't make us sound rather bland, and rather like vanilla, as it were? Well, the first thing we need to do is to understand that content without great delivery is like a great app with really poor user experience. It works, but it just is, right? It works, but it's not great, So I have this app on my phone, and I've had it for 7 years, and it's a fitness app. So effectively, it's meant to be one of these coaches, these app coaches that help you with your strength and with your training and whatnot. And I've had this now for 7 years. And 7 years ago, the idea of it was fantastic. And I'll take it to the gym and I'll follow it. But it was really kind of clunky, It's kind of like, it became, it's more like writing it down. It just basically saved me carrying a notebook and a pen. It wasn't really great user experience. So I left that app and I went to different apps, but they all were kind of very bland until about 4 years ago. And 4 years ago, they did a major overhaul of this app, and the user experience has been improved dramatically. The content hasn't. The content is still do this, do that. How many reps? This is how much weight you got to carry, but do this, do that. But the experience of using it has increased so much. And that is like, as I said, content and delivery. You can have great content, but it's the delivery of that content that the audience find memorable, that the audience find exciting, that the audience find engaging. So I want you to write this down. Again, if you're driving, please don't write it out, but I want you to write this down. Content gets attention. It's what they go, interesting. But delivery is what gets remembered. Content gets attention, delivery gets remembered. When you are presenting, what you really want to do is, when you're delivering those facts, is not about exchange of information. Great presentations aren't a thing about delivering great information. It's about getting people to think differently about what they've heard. Think about it in a different way. Think about it and go, never thought of it that way. When you do that and get people rather digesting information, but to start thinking, going, interesting, that's when it becomes memorable. You see, a lot of speakers, a lot of presenters think delivery, or believe delivery, is the decoration. It's the chalky topping on top of the cake. All the effort is the cake, the content, the fruit, the flour, the sugar, all of that goes into that particular cake. And the delivery is how it's presented. When in fact, the delivery is actually a multiplier, not an addition. It's like going from 5 plus 5 to 5 times 5, from 10 plus 10 to 10 times 10. That is a power of delivery. You can have the same facts. One will just get ignored, and one version will be remembered. The delivery is what makes your facts land. As I said earlier, we live in such a noisy, complicated world right now. Everybody is fighting for attention. If you're going to deliver the same content, or what is perceived as the same content, then you will fall into the same sea of sameness. If that makes sense to you, put a D in the box, a big D. Put a D in the box if you understand that delivery is a multiplier and not just the chalky topping on top. If you understand that the better you deliver your presentation, the more memorable you're going to be. And I know I get really excited about this, and I don't need you to be excited about it and do a dance or do a magic trick or something. But what I am saying to you is this: there are ways you can learn and tricks and strategies that you can do that will change the way you do your delivery, that will make your presentation so much better. So I want you to imagine that you're giving your presentation. In a month's time, you're going to be at Orlando. I know some of you are doing some pre-webinars like we are today. Let me ask you a question and keep it to yourself. This is for you. What is memorable about it? What are you doing to make sure it's memorable inside that presentation? Have you even thought about how you're going to deliver it, or are you just going to say it? You know, what is it about your delivery that makes it memorable? Then what is it that makes you memorable? So I know majority of you said as probably finished your presentations or working the presentation. I don't want you to rework your presentation. I just want you to go through your mind right now and think, what can I add to make it more memorable in the delivery factor of that Venn diagram there? What makes you stand out from there? You see, one major factor to being remembered is how you deliver your presentation to an audience in a way that is different to what they're used to. So let me say that again. One major factor that helps you be remembered as a presenter is how you deliver the presentation to your audience in a way that is different to what they are used to hearing. So they don't switch off. They go, And what we've already talked about, you being testosterone and ready to go, get out the blocks really quickly. We've talked about dopamine and making sure that they are excited for more because they see the reward. What are we going to do when it comes to delivery? Well, as I said, it's not just about how you conduct yourself. It's not just about the stories you tell and the facts. It's about science. And once you've been doing this for 20 years, and I said, you've spoken all over the world, and you've trained and spoken to some of the great speakers, you start to see a pattern. You start to see this scientific proof of what actually happens. So when it comes to delivery, what we use is oxytocin. The love hormone, oxytocin, the love hormone. Oxytocin is often called the love hormone due to its fact in facilitating sort of social environments and social friends and empathy. It's released during physical empathy, physical intimacy, social interactions, listening to music, and just generally feeling good. So if we know that oxytocin makes people feel good, makes people want to like you, why would we not use oxytocin in our presentations? Because it's natural. We've got it in us. We've just got to generate it, or at least inspire the oxytocin to come from our audience. You see, when I was growing up, I grew up in London, and way back when, in the 70s and 80s, I used to hate school. And the reason why I hated school wasn't because like a child hating school, is because I was bullied. I was bullied every single day. You see, when you grew up in the 70s and 80s, being half Chinese, my mum was Chinese and my dad was British, in that period of time, it wasn't a good place to be. You were different. In fact, being different of any kind was really not a pleasant way to grow up way back then. I used to fear coming out of class, because I came out of class and either they'd pull my backpack off, or you walk from building to building and they'd be hiding around the corner and smack. It was just one of the most horrific times of my life, was growing up being bullied. And I had a small handful of friends, and they're still great friends today. But I found it really hard to make friends, because they almost shun you. You're the last to be picked at sports. They're always picking on you. They're laughing at you. So it's really hard to feel worthy and to build up some worth. And for most of my teenage life and adult life, I wanted to change, but I didn't know how. So I almost overcompensated, if you like. And I overcompensated to the point where I became obsessive about being the best at this. And I'll go, I'll show them. I'll be the best at this. I'll be the best at that. I'll be the best at math. I'll be the best at this hobby. And then I'll go and show them how great I am. But that had the opposite effect. From now being bullied for not being good enough, I was now being bullied because I was a threat. I was ignored because I was a threat, because they said, oh, look at him trying to be the greatest at everything, trying to be smarter than us, blah, blah, blah. So that wasn't working either, until someone told me to read this book. And that book was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It completely changed my life. And I've read that book so many times. It's earmarked. In fact, I've got a really old copy of it where it's earmarked and it's been highlighted and underlined. It's been, it's thumbed, worn out, right? But one of the things that I really learned from there was this particular passage there where Dale Carnegie was sitting down for dinner. And he found himself at the table with a botanist, a very famous botanist. And he was having chatted, and he was chatting with this botanist and had great conversation. So much so, the conversation was so great that at the end of the evening, the botanist paid a compliment to Dale Carnegie and said, "Thank you for such great conversation. You're a great conversationist. I look forward to our next conversations as we progress as friends." Dale Carnegie later wrote in his book that actually he didn't say a word. He literally let the botanist chat away, talk about himself, chat about amongst things, and Dale Carnegie just agreed and nodded, all in the right place when he wanted to. See, the key thing is this: when it comes to presenting, if you want your audience to like you and be seen as a great presenter, then the key thing is not to overtalk, it's to be more interested rather than be more interesting. When you get more people in a room that begin to like you because you are talking about their pains and their wins and how it affects them, you no longer have to compete and be the cleverest person in the room. You no longer have to say, "Look how clever I am. Look at all my slides. Look at all my information. Look how much information I'm going to give you because I am obviously cleverer than you." And I'm not saying you guys do that. You see the point that if you are presenting in a way that gives them more wins, that gives them more chance to succeed, that oxytocin starts building inside them and they begin to see you and like you more and become more memorable. If that makes sense, can you put a 7 in the box for me? If you can actually understand now that you don't have to compete with your audience and you can start, just put a 7 in the box for me and start saying, yes, I am going to be far more interested in their wins than being interested in my wins. You've already earned the right to be interested because you're at the front of the room. You're on that stage. You don't need to keep proving it over and over and over again. Start giving back to your audience. And when you give back to your audience, that's when that oxytocin kicks in. And that's when you become far more memorable. So now we've got that, let's look at something else that tends to affect 80 to 90% of our presenters. And that is filler words. In fact, I was talking to someone the other day and they go, "Oh, how do I get rid of the filler words?" You know, because the filler words, we all use them as we sound like we've just beginning to learn the language. It's like, but type UM in the box if you've ever used a filler language in your presentations. Type UM like all right? If you've ever found yourself figuring out what to say and just go, we do. Yeah. Well, the good news is you're not alone. We all do that. You know, thanks for writing that and thanks for sharing it with me. Why it happens is because if we're unsure about what we're saying, or if we're just slightly nervous, or if we are lying, or if we are trying to get over imposter syndrome, or we are just trying to fake it till we make it, those are the reasons why we and But the problem is this: when we and the audience knows that because they and too. So they also know, is it because you're nervous? Is it because you're unprepared? Is it because you're lying? Is it because you are trying to be somebody you're not? The problem is, if once we and or we put more and ums, the audience goes, "I know what's wrong with them. They're lying." In a nice way, they go, "Oh, bless them, they're nervous." But majority of the time, they'll go, "Don't trust them." We don't want them to think that, do we? Because if we leave it up to them, people will always think the worst of us. And this is the challenge we always have. So how do we get rid of it? It's one of the questions I get a lot, all the time almost. Is like, well, how do I stop the and ums? Well, there are many ways of doing it. Being prepared is one way of doing it. Knowing what your outcome is another way of doing it. But one of the very best ways of doing it is to slow down. Just slow down and pause and think. And allows you to regather your thoughts and come across as far more authoritative. You see, what we see time and time again is people try and cram so much information because they're trying to prove how clever they are. They're trying to prove how worthy they are. And you don't need to. You've already earned that right, as I said before. So let me give you an example of this. Remember this? Content gets attention, delivery gets remembered. Let me give you an example. So content, is like kind of gets attention, right? But delivery is what gets remembered. Sounds okay, doesn't it? But how about content gets attention and delivery gets remembered? Slow pauses, put them into your presentation, slow it down. And if you're thinking, oh my gosh, Gary, if I slow down, I'll never get through my content, then you got too much content. You don't need that much content. You're trying to compete again. Take stuff out, give them something memorable that they can take away. So slowing down and pausing not only helps your message land better, but makes you sound far more authoritative when it comes to speaking. Does that make sense to you guys? Hope that makes sense to you. Let's talk about something, as we come to the end of this, let's talk about using the floor space. Using floor space when it comes to your presentation is so much important. You also have a center point. Now, for the majority of you, when you speak at these rooms at the TechXchange, you're going to have tables and tables down the side and this center part, and you're going to have this little desk over the side where you're going to put your laptop. When you start, the way to powerfully start your delivering your presentation to get them memorable is when you start the presentation, I want you to walk to the beginning, to the middle of that room. So ideally, you'd have your tables just to the side of you here. If you're on the big stages, by the way, do the same thing. Walk to the center of the stage, almost to the edge, but not too much where you fall off or worry about falling off, and pause. Put your feet together, pause, shoulders back, and wait, and smile. Just for a split second, and then start. How do you start? You start with a question. You start with asking them to raise their hand. You give them a fact. You some of this. You don't need to waste your time saying, "Hey, can you hear me at the back? Is this mic working?" Whoa! Be powerful from the very start. Tell them what they're going to get out of it, and stay put. Do not move. Do not wander around the stage aimlessly. If you are going to move from your center point, from your PowerPoint, pull back a couple of steps, walk to the side and stare at that side. Don't be this side and then talk over that side. It doesn't work. Using the floor space, and I'm going to talk more about it. If you want to come to the little speaker things that David was talking about earlier on, I can't remember the name of it, come and see me and I'll show you how to do that properly. But don't walk around aimlessly, because every time you walk around aimlessly, you lose your power. You become vanilla. You're blending in. Powerful stage. So just taking this little technique will really help you land that message and be more memorable. And finally, the last one I want to share with you is audience participation. Involve your audience. If you don't have time to involve your audience, you've got too much content. Always involve your audience where you can ask them questions, get them to raise their hands. Sure, there's a technique we use, bounce, when we're speaking, to get people to think of memories that they have and they can relate to it, just like using acronyms or whatever. But always use the power of the audience to help them digest your information, getting them to repeat certain stuff, getting them to raise their hand and say, yay, that's me, I understand that. That is where it's powerful. Which leads me, given the time restraints that we have today, to one very important thing I know a lot of you ask me about all the time is, well, what about Q&A? What about Q&A? When do I do Q&A? Here is my tip for you. Remember the end goal that you want to achieve. And it's, remember I told you command that room. Well, this is where it comes into play. You command that room, and what you don't want is an audience member to knock you off your path. So Q&As are great, but make sure they go at the end of your presentation. What you don't want is someone just come in and go, well, what about this and what about that? And knocks you off and then asks you a question that's irrelevant to what you're doing, and then you lose the audience. You've done so well to get this audience to where you want them to get to, and then one person knocks it off for you. And that's just not fair for you or the other audience. So put the Q&As to the end. Allow people to ask some questions. And if you're doing a workshop type of presentation, put the Q&As at the end of every section before you move to the next section, all right? The challenge with that is that people might then be ahead of you and ask you questions about, well, what about this? And you haven't got to that point yet. But when it comes to Q&A, yes, have them, but do not allow them during your presentation. If that makes sense, put a Q in the box for me, please. If that little nugget there would help you land more of your presentation, put a Q in the box when it comes to Q&A. Do not allow it to come through into your presentation. Always put it at the end. Right, so when it comes now, guys, to the very end of this, always make sure the best way to get them to be memorable, guys, is to rally the troops. Make sure that you give them a call to action. Don't leave them hanging. They deserve far more from you. If you've put the great testosterone presenter in, you've given them the dopamine, you've given them the oxytocin, they are naturally going to be want more from you. So don't leave them hanging. Tell them what else is coming up. Tell them where they can get more information. Get them to come up and speak to you. Get them to get a QR code, but always do something that allows you to rally the troops, to get them more, not for you, but for them, so that they have the ability to make sure that they can get more of you, more of your unforgettable presentation styles and what they can get to help them get better at what they do. So hopefully, guys, as we come to the end of our presentation today, I've given you some great nuggets from here of what to do, how to change, and to go from where you are being great to being unforgettable as a presenter. There's so much more I wish I could share with you. So I do hope that you'll come to my other 2 events in the event. And at the very least, come to the clinic and let me help you with your presentation. So hopefully that's been great for you guys. Can you do me one last favor before I'll put back to David, is that as a speaker, as we should always be looking to improve. So on a scale of 1 to 10, please, if it's 1, God, that guy really stank, or 10, yes, I've got some really great nuggets, please put a number in the box for me, please. And then I will learn, obviously, and get better and better and better as I do it. And the more better I get, the more better that you guys get. So if you can put a number in the box for me, I really, really appreciate it. And I'll hand it over to David to take us away and wrap this up.